My grandparents moved to Maine in the early 1900s. My dad was born in Fairfield in 1925 because that's where my grandparents were living at the time because he was working on the Kennebec River. So they were right there where the log drives were and everything. And then he got a job up here and doing construction, I guess. So he bought the place sometime shortly after 25. So I'm going to think around 28 because that's when, because my father started school here in Winterport. So he was here, for that. And they moved, like I said, down the road from where I am. My father and grandfather were working in the woods in Ashland at the time. So my mom was staying with her mom up in Fort Kent, and Claire's going back and forth, Canada and Fort Kent. So I think on weekends they probably came back home down here in Winterport and then go back up during the week while they're working in the woods. But most of it, I remember being here in Winterport. And it was just like maybe a 2-bedroom home when we was growing up, and no indoor plumbing whatsoever until I was 10 years old, before we got the well. So we had an outhouse. That's where we went. Wintertime, you didn't stay there very long. Spring, summer, you didn't because of the mosquitoes, black flies. But yeah, I can always remember that. And we had, it was around 1960, my dad worked for the Maine Central Railroad in Bangor at the time. And so he was digging out the cellar, so we put a foundation in under the house. And then we were adding on to it, put 4 bedrooms upstairs because the family was starting to get bigger. So during the day, in the summertime, we'd go down under the house there with our small pickaxes they bought us and shovels and pick away at the clay and knock it down. And we'd try loading up at least one load of the clay in the wheelbarrow. Then my dad would come home and he'd wheel it out and dump it and come back, and away we go. It was just amazing the amount of work that they did back then, plus a regular job. I can remember when the telephone came into the house. Saw him put it right on the wall. The TV, when we got our first TV, saw that come in. Everything was black and white, of course. And I go, wow. I said, these are all the same things we used to hear on the radio. Dad said, yeah, these are the shows. And of course they run funny, back the old film back in the 30s, 40s. And Channel 5 finally came on the air in 51, after 52, I guess it was, somewhere there. I'm about the same age as Channel 5, so. All I can remember when I started talking, I was talking French, because that's what my mom and dad always taught. So my sister and I were talking French, and then when she went to school, she had to learn English. Then she'd come home and teach me some English, and my mom would as well to get me ready for 2 years later when I went to school. So I had a new language, and when we had, there was 3 houses, 2 other houses next to ours on the Stream Road where I grew up in Winterport. And one of the houses was my cousin. The other house beside us had a large French family, but they talked some French, but we played with them quite a bit. I think there was like 14 kids in that family. And then my cousin. So we'd go back and forth between my cousin's house and ours, and then the other neighborhood kids my age, our age, would come out and play. And I'd never liked coming inside in the afternoon to have a nap. Mom would always want us to have a nap, and I didn't want to. I wanted to stay outside and play. And when my cousin and I did play with our toys and stuff, a lot of it was in the road. It was a dirt road. There was hardly any traffic back then. So you could do it, you could hear the cars coming. So, and then just beyond him was a frog pond that we'd catch some frogs and, let them hop back in the pond and stuff. Riding bikes and going through the woods, going fishing and exploring. My cousin and I did a lot of that when we were younger, and we'd, after we was like 8 or 9, his mother Aunt Teresa used to take us, my dad's sister, used to take us fishing in the brook that runs down by the railroad trestle. And it was just a fantastic spot to go, and I always had vivid memories of going there was like 3 fishing holes that had trout in it. And it was always fun getting that nibble and bite. And then she took us sometimes in the stream in back of our place. And then when I learned to swim was down there by the trestle, or down a little further where my grandparents lived. My dad's family grew up just half mile down. And there was nice layouts of rocks down there. It used to be back in the 1800s, used to be a village there, and a mill, like a grist mill, because there's still a stone, a big wheel stone, grinding stone, in the water there now. So the layout was pretty good. So we had places that we could play on the rock and also jump in and go swimming. Well, that's where I learned to swim. Just Dad threw me in, told me to move my hands and kick my feet. Back in the 1860s, when the town was first incorporated, there were like 3,000 or 4,000 people in town, because they had a lot of small businesses along the river that you don't have now, because you have different transportation now. Just up the road here, it's the marketplace now. That used to be, they used to call it the Rexall drugstore. We called it the drugstore. And nice people that owned it back in the day, so we'd go in there. The people we loved a lot was Susie's Market, and he lived right here in town, and his son-in-law, Sonny Elhaz, and he was very prominent in this town. He had a store right across from where Dean's Tire is. That used to be a store. And I always made sure we catered to them and supported them. So the smaller town in the 50s, 60s, we pretty much almost knew everybody, and so we always got along fairly well and did some things. And even though those of us out back called this downtown kids and we were out back kids, there's a difference there a little bit, but I still love them all down here, because, well, a good part of them are my cousins. Coming from a large family, my father was a family of 7, and 2 of his sisters lived here in town, and Don, Rita, Nelson had 5 sons, and then Aunt Teresa and Uncle Frank moved from next to us down here, and that was one of the worst days of my life, because now I lost my best friend that I'd go out through in the woods and fishing and hunting and exploring the woods. We'd go out and look for pine trees, climb them, look around, see another, we'll go to that one. Didn't know the dangers of being out in the woods alone, but didn't really care. I was the one that learned at a young age, like through Boy Scouts, and making fire early. I learned to make fire early because we always had a wood stove at home. And so we'd go out in the woods, and I'd always build a fire. So in the wintertime especially, we'd go to the brook, chop a hole in the ice, get water out, and I'd start the fire, and so we could boil water and make hot cocoa, and we'd take our baked potatoes, wrap it in tinfoil, put it in the fire to bake potato and hot dogs, and that was our lunches, through this much snow back then. Well, at least, once we did it the first time, the second time we was going out, and the next week usually is a little easier because we already got a path made. So what happened was, the baby boomers were getting older, and now they're going to school. Well, where the Smith School is now, it was just that one building that used to house 5th through 12th. So, and at the old elementary school on School Street is where 1 through 4 was. We didn't have kindergarten at that time. That came along a few years later. So, like I said, in 66, 65, 66 era, the school board that they had here, and they voted that, rather than expand the school that they had there, that tried to find towns that would take us. They first went to Hampden, and Hampden said no, Bangor said no, and Brewer did accept us. Searsport said no also. I think Searsport, that was first, and then they tried Hampden, and they didn't want us because it was going to expand their school system as well. So we went to Brewer Winterport kids went there from 66 to 71. So my grade was the first one going there that went all 4 years, and then like Kathy, her brother-in-law, Chuck, graduated from Brewer in 71. So they let the juniors that year go another year. The first day we went there, I remember it vaguely. We're going by, used to be John Paul Fitz'em-all store, and going right around that corner down Parkway South, and I go, oh my God, here we are, and there's the high school. Because you could see it, there weren't, any buildings or anything there. And I go, oh my God, look at this. Look at the size of the school. Got in the hallway, they're twice as wide as what they have here at the Smith School, And I go, wow. I said, what are these people going to think of me from Winterport, They're going to hate me, I don't know. I'll try my best what I can do. Right from the first day, there was a bunch of them came up and asked me, where are you from? I said, Winterport. Oh, how'd you like it down there? And I'd say some stuff and everything. And got along just great with them all. When my wild and crazy day started was when I bought that '69 BSA motorcycle. And on TV, on the Disney, at night, Sunday night, this one movie came on, this series, The Scarecrow, Romney Marsh. And I go, wow, I like that. They would ride on their horses, standing up on their horse. They had a stick across their shoulders so it looked like they were wider or something, I don't know. And I said, you know, if they can do that on a horse, there's no reason I can't do this on my motorcycle. So I went up the road from where I live, and it's flat, and I got the bike going at 30 miles an hour. So I stood up on it and balanced. I go, wow. So then I stood up, and I did that 3 or 4 times. Like, wow, this is easy. This is awesome. So then I came into town one time with my buddy, and I said, hang on. So I started up by the pizza places, coming down through right by the Exxon and drugstore. That's where a lot of the kids were, you know, hanging out between the rock wall up there and down here. So I come down through town, 30 miles an hour, standing right up on the seat of that, waving to everybody like that, and they go, oh my God. And so then when I get up to Brewer High in the spring, because I take my motorcycle, so I'd have a ride home from baseball, I'd start on Wilson Street, because that's where they had the twin cinemas there next to the high school, and it was the A&P where the Hannaford is now. I'd start at Wilson Street and come across the parking lot, standing right up, and the kids in the morning there, before they had gone to class, they're out there having their cigarettes and stuff, and I'd come right across like that, and they'd drop their cigarettes. Wow. Well, the next morning I did it, come up there, and there was like, I don't know, 150 or more kids out there. Well, you gonna do that, right? Yeah, all right. No problem. So I did it, come through. Well, we get into class and everything, and we always have our morning announcements at 8 o'clock. So they had the announcement, and then right at the end, the assistant principal said, will Roger Doyon please report to Ken Perone's office? And I go, oh, geez, he wants to talk. He was my high school coach, great coach, football and baseball. I said, oh, I'm gonna talk baseball. And so I went in to see him, and he goes, hey, Roy, what's up? I said, oh, not much. He said, how much you love baseball? I said, oh, you know, that's me through and through, baseball. That's all I love. All I think about and how to make it better so we keep winning. Well, good. I'm glad you feel that way. He said, you got to make a choice right here. I said, oh, yeah, what's that? He said, you want to catch this year, or do you want to show off on that motorcycle? I said, well, I can't do both. No, I'm not going to have my catcher falling off that damn motorcycle and getting hurt and not be able to catch, and then we're in the bind. And no, I don't want to lose. I told you already. I don't like losing. Losing's not in me. Winning breeds winning. I'm not going to be in losing. He said, I need you. Oh, sorry. I said, well, yeah, I want to play ball. He said, good, no more. I said, well, there's supposed to be a lot of people out there tomorrow. Can I do it one more time? It's today. You make your choice today. I go, all right, I'll play ball. All right. So the next morning I come in, like I said, bigger crowd, and they said, you gonna do it? And I said, I can't, I promised Coach. Oh, we won't tell him. I said, yeah, how'd you find out yesterday? So that was the end of that at school. But my last year there, from 69 to 70, my senior year, we had the juniors and seniors at Brewer, the sophomores went to Bangor, and the freshmen, that was the first year they started at Hampden, was fall of 69. So when we were playing baseball, we were playing against our own, kids here in school that we played Little League with back in the day. In junior high, I did play basketball here, and where the new building is in town, that used to be, the town hall used to be there, and that's where we all played basketball because we didn't have a gym at school. So for things like that, and that's where we had any plays that we had were there at the town hall. They were usually, like at night when people weren't working and everybody could attend. But they had a lot of activities there too. The town team, they'd have a team, and there'd be some other people coming in. They'd have donkey basketball, and I remember the donkeys, but I was quite young. I don't remember too much of what they had to do, like dribble while they were on the donkey or just pass. I don't know, but it was a mess because they couldn't hold it, sometimes. They'd have to go out on the floor and clean it up. But there was quite a few of that. So we did play basketball. We didn't have football in town. unless we got together and, we'd probably have like tag or flag football or something. That was about it. Our parents wouldn't let us tackle. They didn't want us getting hurt. And they were probably right, because we probably would have got hurt. In Little League, I was a catcher, and the kid in town, Mike Trash, was a pitcher. And oh my God, he threw hard. And in high school, it got just strong. And his older brother threw even harder, but he didn't have the control that Mike had. And I remember one Little League game I was watching when Jerry was pitching. He hit a kid in the helmet, and it just shattered the helmet, knocked him down and everything. But he got back up after a while. He got numb, but it just shattered the helmet. That's how hard he hit it. And that's how good the helmets were back then. And then another kid, he hit him right in the ribs there. And I'll tell you, I didn't know if he was going to make it or not. He turned all blue and purple and everything, and they finally got him back around. But with Mike, he's still here in town. I see him a lot of times in the morning at the store, and we kind of reminisce about a few things, baseball teams that we were on. Unfortunately, we lost one of our other players that lived in town that was a good ball player, all around basketball, football, baseball, and track. So he was a fast runner. I was pretty decent for back then. I had a lot of stolen bases in high school, so fortunately. I could ride. All that practice I had outback. All the walking, running and stuff we did. And riding the bicycle, wherever I had to go, I had to take my bike, because, Mom never had a car. We only had one car back then growing up, and that was for Dad to go to work. So when I started working out back on a farm for Pat and Lou Madrazo, I used to ride my bike out there. And it was 5 miles. And I loved it. I just loved it. There was a few hills there, but especially when it got closer to the farm. From here out to there was flat, but from my house up it was flat until I got to the hills there by the apple orchard. And then I also worked in the fall picking apples. There's 2 orchards in town, Joe Burns and Blazo's Orchards. And the woman at Blazo's Orchards was real good friends with Pat from the farm. And she said, I need Roger because I'd go out after school, ride my bike out, work 2 or 3 hours picking apples till it got dark. And she wanted me for Saturday and Sunday as well. And Pat says, no, I have Roger one of those days. He's my priority and he's mine first. So that worked out pretty good. But I met my wife that Friday night. They had a dance in Winterport at the Pineview Pavilion. It was a dance hall. He had it for the kids on Friday night, no alcohol, and then Saturday night was for the adults. So I went there, and I was talking to some people, because I knew, like I said, I knew about everybody there. I was talking to these people, and here comes my wife, and I look, and I go, wow, look at her. And she sits down, and I stood up, trying to be a gentleman. She's, oh, for crying out loud, sit down. Gosh, who do you think you are? I said, just trying to be polite. I said, I'm Roger Doyon. Yeah, I've heard of you. Because she was friends with some people here in Winterport. She was from Hampden. And I go, by golly, you know what? I think I'm going to marry that girl someday. So I kept, calling her up and, kind of chasing her, I guess, as you'd call it. And that was the same year that I started drag racing in '72, because I bought a new car from when I got home from Florida. So that's how I met her, and then she liked drag racing, but she liked the oval racing more, the stock cars. And I wasn't into those at that time. So finally in late '73 and early '74, we were getting along pretty good, going out all the time, and my heart was just right there. I said, you know what, I think we ought to get married. So we got married on Valentine's Day of '75. And then my daughter was born almost a year later. She was born in Bangor on Groundhog's Day of '76 was the day they had the floods in Bangor. So I call her my flood baby. And then my son was born in '81. And he found a house he wanted to stay in Winterport, go up here, but he found a place in Frankfort, so he goes up there. And he has 2 boys, 7 and 4. And so they're just attached right to me, Papa, Papa, Papa. And my oldest grandson, he lives on the Boston Road, and he just got married last year, and they're going to have a baby in May. So I'm going to be a great grandfather. And a girl, finally. I said, a girl. We got too many boys around. We're getting a girl. So another one I could spoil. I remember one special thing we had in town in 1960 was celebrating the 100th year of Winterport being incorporated, because we used to be Frankfort back in the day. And then in 60, there was a dispute about who owned the bridge down there where the dam is in Frankfort. So then Winterport decided to break off from Frankfort and have our own town, and so that was in 1860. Well, in 1960, they decided to have a big celebration birthday party in town here, and at the marina, they had a naval ship come up, the USS Lincoln. For whatever reason, I still remember it to this day, you know. And the sailors coming up, and then down in those hangars down in there, the Quonset huts, they'd have movies. We were all invited to go down for a nickel and watch movies. And then they'd play at the Little League field, they'd play softball, and, you know, against American Legion, because it was American Legion that got involved to get the ship up here, the naval ship. That was a big time. They had street dances going on, and banners everywhere, red, white, and blue. And everyone on the bicycles in town had the ribbons, red, white, and blue ribbons around the spokes, you know, and flags hanging on the back. And it was pretty neat. One of the first things I noticed that came in town, I think it was either 67, 68, was the Nativity scene, they called it. There was the live Nativity. That was always special to me. But for some other reason, I don't know, I never was asked to be a participant. Once they got them the first year, everybody wanted to do it again from there on out through. And I was in high school, which, you know, I probably would have done it if they'd asked, but for some reason they didn't, and that's fine, you know. But I'd always take my kids down, explain to them about the birth of baby Jesus, and took my grandsons down and showed them, and that was quite a thing, especially when they turned the lights on, and the angel was up in front of the church, you know, with the wings spread out, and it was all on the shadow was on the background of that church, the white church. It was just amazing. And a lot of people there, townspeople singing, you know, Christmas carols and stuff. Yeah, I love that. And then later in life, my wife was involved with the women's club, so I tried to do a few things for them and help out what I could. And then I got involved with town politics because a friend of mine that moved here in the town, he got involved with it and was telling me, you know, this is what's going on with your tax dollars, you need to get more involved and stuff. And so I did, and I think 94 was the first year that I ran and got right in. And then my second term, I decided, you know, I knew it was going to be a lot of people calling, complaining about things and stuff, and so I decided not to run. Well, then I had phone calls, why ain't you running, why can't you do this and that? So I put a letter out to the people and said, look, if you want to take the time and put me in as a write-in candidate, because it was too late to take out my nomination papers, and this was like 2 or 3 weeks before the election, and I said, if you want to write my name down, and I get enough votes to get in, I'll serve you. I didn't think I'd have a snowball chance in Hades to get in, you know. So, and by golly, I did. I made it on the write-in. I think Roger Packer was telling me I was the first and only that got in on a write-in ballot. How I feel about being elected as a write-in, yeah, very proud, emotional, and very shocked, to say the least, that the people took the time to write my name down. Yeah, I was quite honored. I just wished I could have, I don't know if I'd have done anything different. You know, I still felt that I held my ground for the right reason, for the people. Because I told a lot of the people that I really loved in this town were the older generation. That meant a lot to me. And now they're up there retired. The money is limited, you know, when you're on fixed income. And I wanted to make sure that they had enough money that they could still buy clothes, heat the house, and have food, and, you know, instead of worrying about something else. So that's why I did what I did. It's a close-knit bonding town. Yeah, it's usually very friendly, you know, get to meet people. You know, we like the simple things here in town, live that way.